I need to get myself into treatment. A buddy of mine owned a treatment center, and I ended up reaching out to him. And after I reached out to him, he's on the phone. He's like, "Let's get you tapped in." I didn't know what it meant at the time. I know what it means now. But he said, "Let's get you tapped in." And I think I made my way into his treatment center like maybe 2 months after that call, bro. A month and a half, 2 months later. But finally got in there, and I haven't looked back since.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's amazing when you hit that moment and you really put the effort in, right? Like you really try and recover. You really take the time to do it and take it seriously. Because that's when you see the differences. That's when you see the changes. And you just mentioned that, you made that call and then there was a month, 2 month there, month and a half.
Yeah.
Were you clean during that time or were you just trying to
Oh
survive
no.
until you made it? Yeah.
Hell no. There's never a good time for stuff like that. It's like, oh man, I gotta film City Line. Oh, I got this event coming up. Oh, I'm just not ready. Oh, I gotta do my
Mhm.
laundry. Just whatever excuse I could find, bro, to not go in there. Ultimately, I knew it was what was best for me. I knew it was a life or death situation, but I was just pulling any excuse that I could, bro, because I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna be able to work for 3 weeks. I need to clear my calendar, this and that. I mean, ultimately, there's no good time to just kind of like, go dark for 3 weeks, depending on who you are and what your situation is. But for me at that time, I felt at that time that like this is going to be next to near impossible for me to clear my schedule for 3 weeks. And that also ties into the fact of like me wanting to always be in control and be the director and like, have final say in everything, that I do kind of thing. So yeah, man, it took me a minimum of a month and a half to get into the treatment center after I'd made that initial call. When really I made that call and I should have driven right there. Drove right there.
Yeah, no, and I asked you that because there was like I was basically a homeless heroin addict right before I got clean and I had done some things and my parents found out about it, so they reached back out and they said, "Hey, look, we'll help you through this if you finally give rehab a chance." Because I had never tried rehab, I never tried to fully get clean, and they're like, "If you try, we will help you out." And
Right.
it was about 2 months that they took me back in before I actually made it to a rehab center and I just went back to destroying their life once I came back in because I was stealing from them again. I was lying to them again. I was doing all this stuff. And I was making excuses of, well, I can't go to that rehab center. That one's 9 months long. I can't go to that one, or that one's too religious. I can't go to that one. Or, I was doing that same, and I didn't have anything going on in my life like you were. Like you might have had some responsibilities to take care of, but as addicts, we'll convince ourselves that there's a million reasons why we don't need to do this.
Yep.
And for me, I think it was really just a deep seated root in fear. Like I was so scared, man. I had been using since I was 11, 12 years old. And I had never sat with myself without being high, without smoking a joint or, having a drink. I never sat with myself. And so I was so terrified of what my life was going to be like. I was so terrified for one, I wasn't going to be able to do it. I was terrified that I wasn't going to be able to handle some of the trauma that I knew was about to come back into my mind from when I was younger and the things that happened through addiction. And it was a terrifying, a terrifying thing. And so just like for you going into it, I mean, since you had a little bit of clean time once before years prior, were you able to pull from that or were you still like scared and had some fear behind like, "Oh, I got to do this again"?
Sorry, was I able to pull from what? Sorry.
Your first, that 10 months that you had prior, were
Oh,
you able to
oh
like kind of
man.
look at that experience at all?
Yeah, bro, definitely. And I'm glad you brought that up again because that was such a pivotal moment of my career. Uh, that was such a pivotal moment of my journey, not my career. Because I was reintroduced to 12 steps then. I started to take classes on like negative self-talk and all these different
Mhm.
things that I never really knew that self-love and all these things that I never really knew mattered before, right? Everything was just so superficial in my mind. So yeah, for sure, I was able to pull a lot of stuff. Check this. So in 2014, one of the counselors there who broke me, his job was to break people like myself who were so high on themselves. his job was to crush us, right? And I actually shared when I was sharing at a meeting. I was the speaker at a meeting last week, and I mentioned this guy, and someone in the crowd, someone in the fellowship there knew exactly who I was talking about, and I could tell by their face they knew exactly who this guy was. He's a legend in the game. Anyways, he broke me down so hard. He crushed my spirits, bro, in such a good way. Because now when I look back, I'm so indebted to him. But I was asked, why do you get high? And my response was, why else? I like the feeling. Like, why else would I get? I love the feeling of being high.
Mhm.
And and the counselor was like, what's wrong with the way that you feel without it? And then I realized at that moment, it was a huge light bulb moment for me. I realized at that moment that I had major issues, like you said, sitting with myself. I had major issues with that. It was cold, it was icky, it was uncomfortable, it was unknown. I didn't like it. So I had to do whatever I could